Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at carolthecoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I'm married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need. Oh.
Yeah, and you know, the thing about Russell is that he says, I love sex. But the bottom line is, he loves the novelty of sex. He loves the affection, the attention, the brain hit of sex. It's not so much sex that he loves, I guarantee you. How do I know? Because I am Carol the Coach, and hey, this is Sex Help with Carol the Coach. This is the only show on iTunes where we talk about sexual addiction, and I am so pleased to be with you tonight. This is a privilege and an honor to talk with some of the experts in the world about what they know to be true in terms of treatment of sexual addiction. And I often talk to my clients, my listeners, and sex addicts and their partners around the world to find out what they're struggling with. So if you, as a listener, feels like there's something that you could contribute to this show, please don't hesitate to call at 317-847-2244 after the show, and or you can email me at carolthecoach@AOL.com or go to my website, and that's Sex Help with Carol the Coach. And last but not least, my other website, which is just carolthecoach.com. Those are 4 different ways you can get a hold of me to give me your comments and or to contribute to the show. Let me know how you believe you can be helpful in creating the format of this show. There's a part of me that would love for this to be a call-in show. Call-in only. If you've been listening to my show and you've researched anything about me, you know that I have had many radio shows in the Indianapolis area. And they weren't internet. They were actually on the biggest radio talk show format in the state, and they were call-in, and I loved that. But that was when I just opened it up to sex, love, and relationships. It wasn't particularly about sex addiction, and what I know to be true is that when you're talking about sex addiction, there's a lot of shame and a lot of fear that you'll be discovered. And so people email me questions as opposed to calling the show. If you have a question and you want to call me right now, you can do that at 646-595-3284. Because in about 10 minutes, I'm going to be interviewing Roane and Eva Hunter. And they're an amazing duo. They actually are a couple that have dealt with sexual addiction personally and professionally. They found that sharing their journey together about sexual addiction and the recovery experience was so hopeful to so many couples that it actually helped to restore and heal. And so they wrote a book, and they are more than happy to talk to couples to give them encouragement that this is not only something that you can deal with, but that you can grow stronger as a result. And I buy into that too. There is no doubt in my mind that anything that proves itself as an obstacle can actually prove itself to be a strength in your own character development, in your own recovery, and in the things that you want for your life. You've heard me say it before. Addicts in recovery are the finest people in the world, and I'm getting ready to celebrate a 60th birthday. Yep, it's actually on November 7th, but the big party is this week. And I got to tell you, over half of my guests, and there'll probably be 60, 70 people here, half of my guests are in recovery. And that's because those are the people I admire the most. Those are the people that are working on themselves. Those are the people that recognize what they need to do to make their life better, and they did it. I asked my group tonight, I said, are you committed to this work, or are you interested? Because you guys know, you men and women out there know that there is a big difference. Lots of you are interested in finding out what it would take to work into recovery and to manage this disorder and to grow stronger. But the real bottom line is, are you committed to doing the work? And let's face it, that in itself can be very, very tough. And when you do the tough stuff, well, I guarantee you, it reaps rewards, and the investment is major. And yet, so is the outcome. So, ask yourself, am I doing everything possible to make my life better? Am I putting in everything that I need to put in to get the most out of my recovery? I know that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It's amazing stuff, but I'm telling you, when you do the work, the dividends come. I would ask you, whether you be a partner or an addict, what gets in your way from getting healthy? One of the things that I talk about happens to be defense mechanisms. Now, you see, in addiction, and when you love somebody who's addicted, it's very easy to have defense mechanisms, and they may be as simplistic as denial. Patrick Carnes talks about the fact that is the first step to recovery, is breaking through the denial. And denial itself means that you don't even know that you're lying to yourself about the gravity of the situation. Or you think that, yes, I've got a problem, but I can whip this thing and I can do it by myself. I don't need anybody or anything else to help me. I can kick this. So when you're in denial, you continue to enable yourself to not get healthy. And that isn't going to work. Now, another defense mechanism is minimization. I mean, how many of you have minimized the impact, the seriousness of this disorder? Sex addiction is a tough thing. And when I'm talking with my addicts, I am working with them so that they'll stop minimizing, so that they'll empathize with the people that they love, and they'll stop blowing off the fact that this is ruining their life. And when I talk to my partners, the partners of the addicts, I oftentimes see ongoing parallel problems that have gone on over and over and over again. I'll have a wife who says, I just want him to say, I'm sorry, and he doesn't do it. Or a partner that may say, you know what, I am really sick and tired of him not being 100% honest with me. He tells me a day later, a week later, a month later, when he's gotten correspondence from somebody. And he doesn't feel the need to really tell me because he has not responded. But our agreement is that he tell me even if it does not result in him doing anything inappropriate. Well, I believe if you're in that category, if you're a partner and your loved one, your addict, is having this kind of trouble and he continues to ignore the commitment that he's made, then you got one of three choices. You either A, get tougher, don't let it get to you, come up with some action plan so that ultimately you do know whether you can feel safe and establish some trust and feel that connection, or you create consequences that are severe enough that either he or she gets off the pot and makes the decision to do the next right thing, or you get a separation and you decide, is this really healthier for you? Because maybe your addict can't change. Maybe he or she is not at a point of changing. Now tonight, again, we're going to be interviewing a couple who has made amazing growth and changes. They have turned their life around. They minister their CSATs in training. I mean, this couple has written a book called Couples Roadmap to Recovery, From False Intimacy to True Intimacy. And they're going to be talking about, can a couple overcome sexual addiction? And does the marriage need to end? And what is false intimacy? And how have things changed your life as a result of the addiction and the recovery process? They're going to offer some hope, strength, and recovery. So we are very, very fortunate to have Roane and Eva Hunter from LifeWorks Counseling. They're both licensed professional counselors and national certified counselors through MBCC, and they are both in the process of getting their sex addictions certification through the International Institute for Trauma and Addiction Professionals, which is, of course, where I graduated. And they were recommended to me because their story is so compelling. So, again, I cannot wait to be interviewing them. We need more hope, strength, and recovery here because I'm guaranteeing you if you do the work, it works. And when you do the work, it has rippling effects to everybody in your family and to generations to come. Now, I have said it over and over again that we are all pioneers in this field, and we can all work together to make this a better place. And, of course, Dr. Carnes said, once you get into true recovery and you have that spiritual transformation, the next thing that has to happen is you have to give back. And that is what this couple has done. And it's pretty amazing. So I'm looking forward to hearing how did they do it and just their story in general. So oftentimes this show is about stories. I think stories are the best way to learn. And that's why I feel so thankful to be doing this stuff. And you have been such an appreciative audience. I get thank yous all over the world every day. We've got over 20,000 open downloads a week. Now, I don't know if you're listening to the entire show, but clearly you're opening it up. You're not just downloading it, but you're listening to a part of it. And I find that media is one of the best ways to get information as long as it's accurate and as long as it's not sensationalized. And that is something that this show will never do. We will never sensationalize sexual addiction. It is what it is. You know, last week I gave a 10-minute TED Talk on the gifts of sexual addiction because there are many gifts. When you're in recovery, you're a better person. Your partners do better work. You have healthier families. And you have your priorities and your values in place. And it just does not get better than that. And that's why I encourage everybody to recognize how their lives are changing and not to be humble about that, to own it, to talk about it, to give thanks for it. You know, we got Thanksgiving coming up, to have a lot of gratitude about all the changes that are occurring. And you could oftentimes do that in a 12-step meeting or Recovery Nation or Celebrate Recovery. There are lots of different opportunities to get healthy. And I just want you to know, you to do it alone. That just doesn't work. Now, you can always call in the show at 646-595-3284. And that is the number to call. So I look forward to hearing Roane and Eva, and I just know that, you know, people work so diligently at making choices that will benefit them. And I appreciate that because clearly when they do, it makes a big, big difference in the lives of the listeners, in the lives of friends, and, of course, in your family. And don't minimize the importance because I'm telling you, it really can make a difference. You're listening to Carol the Coach. This is Sex Help with Carol the Coach, and we're going to take a short break, and we'll come back in just a minute.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at carolthecoach.com.
That's right. This is Carol the Coach, and we are so glad to be with you tonight. And as I said, we are going to be interviewing a couple that has got a lot of expertise, both personally and professionally. So I am so blessed to welcome the two of you to the Sex Help with Carol the Coach show. I've got Roane and Eva Hunter on the line. Welcome you two to Carol the Coach.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Hi there. I got a lot of recommendations to interview you because your dynamic coupleship is inspiring to so many people, and you've actually written about that. Is correct?
We have. We're actually in the process of writing our book. It's going to be called The Couples, The Journey of a Marriage, from False Intimacy to True Intimacy. And we're going to tell our story in the book and weave in some of the clinical pieces that we've certainly learned along the way and as part of our CSAT training as well.
Okay, so now you've got to help me to understand. The two of you made the choice to go into the specialization of sexual addiction. What made you decide to go that direction?
Well, we got there in our own journey of recovery. At 28 years old, I admitted to Eva that I had a problem with pornography. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. It was a full-blown sexual addiction. Certainly at that time, I had no idea what that term even was or meant. And that was in 1990. There wasn't a whole lot out there around it, that's for sure. And so we began the journey at that point, and it's been a long road to get to where we are.
Yes, it's been.
All right, and
years.
you two are on a speakerphone right now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Okay, I'm gonna ask you each if you could grab a phone or share that one and take yourself off a speaker. It's coming out a little muffled, and I want to hear every word as to your recovery and how you did that and how you helped each other and got into this wonderful profession. So tell me a little bit, Rowan, how did you first realize that you had a sexual addiction?
Yeah, Carol, I'm going to have Eva. Can she call in on her phone, and then that way we can take it off of speaker?
I think we can sure give that a try. Let's give it a shot and see what happens.
Okay. Yeah, that'll probably work a little better at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you two will know when you're talking because you'll be able to see each other, and it'll be clear. That would be wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be good. I was 28 years old, and Eva and I were standing in the kitchen and having a discussion. We don't even know if it was an argument. And she was asking me, why are you so down? What's going on? And so the words just came out of my mouth that I have a problem with pornography. And I had been depressed and was just distant, and she knew something was going on, but she had no idea because it was all hidden and all secret.
And can I just check in with Eva? Eva, you absolutely didn't have a clue, not even a gut feeling that something was wrong and it might have involved being unfaithful or pornography?
I did not think it was pornography or that he had been unfaithful. I knew something was not right, but I just really could not put my finger on it. I had asked a couple of times throughout. At this point, we had been married for 7 years. I'd asked a few times within the relationship what it was. At one point, he did admit that he had masturbated, and, oh, my goodness, I absolutely overreacted and flipped out about that. And, my response was just part of my own naivete, not really understanding a man, for one thing. So then when he admitted to porn, and we were very much living a life of, he presented one thing and was absolutely doing another. So I was totally blown away. It upset my whole world.
Oh, I bet. Okay, so then how did the two of you work this thing out? Rowan, you had to feel a lot of shame.
Yes, part of our story, too, is just we were very involved in our church, and we kind of looked like the model couple, and, all this other was just hidden and secret. And just relationally, we were struggling. We tell people we grew up, we were like two ticks without a dog, sucking the life out of each other. And so I was certainly, living this double life and hidden in secret, and the shame was eating me alive. And then when I, came out with it, everything began to change for me, because part of it was just admitting the problem and getting it out and exposing it. And I felt even a sense of freedom, but certainly the devastation that it caused for Eva was very difficult.
Okay, so then what'd you do next?
Well, I immediately, really that first week, I got plugged in with a counselor and began to do the work in my own journey and beginning to understand kind of how I had gotten there. And pretty soon after that, got involved in a recovery group, support group, and began, doing recovery in a very serious way because I really wanted to deal with this thing in my life. And Eva, at that point, and we didn't certainly know it at the time, but she was dealing with just her own trauma, PTSD from the revelation of, finding out all of this information.
So, Eva, can you describe a little bit about that post-traumatic stress? What were some of the symptoms, and how did you cope with it?
I did not cope well at all. I had a lot of intrusive thoughts, a lot of obsessive thinking, a lot of anger, just feeling very lost, not really sure what the next hour was going to hold for me. The anger was so intense that it even scared me. I did not, and at that time, they really didn't, know a whole lot about what the partner experiences. So Roane was getting a lot of help, and I was not getting hardly any help. I would show up at the counseling sessions, but there was just nothing that was offered to me whatsoever. At that time, I did not do well at all.
Okay, now, Roane, I have to assume that you were seeing a CSAT or you were involved in a sexual addiction group. Is that correct?
Well, at that time, this was 1990, and there was no such thing as CSAT.
Okay.
And I did get involved in an SA group. It was a little bit different because it was Christ-centered, and the only difference was instead of higher power, we just inserted Jesus Christ. But it was a 12-step group, and I was doing 12-step work in that group. And our therapist at the time was he was more of a sex therapist than a sex addiction specialist. Which again, in the early 90s, there wasn't a whole lot out there, and so we were living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, and he came highly recommended and certainly understood the whole arena of sexuality and sexual brokenness.
Well, thank goodness that you at least got to a specialist who was the best possible of the times. So you were getting help, and that therapist couldn't refer anybody that could really understand Eva's trauma. So what did you two do next?
Well, we like Eva said, we would go to counseling, and now that we are counselors, we know when a couple walks in the door, and the kind of the dynamic was, I'm okay, fix him. We didn't get very far in the counseling process as far as the marriage, and so we spent about 2 years kind of trying to do that. And Eva was just really, we know now how this trauma mirrors. Certainly, it may not be the PTSD disorder, but it's going to mirror those symptoms, and that's what she was suffering from. And we just kind of wallowed in that for about 2 years, and we decided at that point that we just could not do it any longer, and so we actually divorced.
Oh, my goodness.
We were divorced and separated for a total of about a year. And one of the things that Eva, she saw that I was committed to my recovery even during, the divorce, and I was still, going to therapy. I did, I was went to see my therapist. I was in a therapy group with him, and then also I was in, recovery and support group as well.
Well, it's interesting because there's no doubt that many couples face issues surrounding sexual addiction, both inside and outside of the counseling community. So here you two were struggling and actually got a separation and then a divorce. What kind of issues do you think you faced that was exclusive to the two of you and also not so exclusive that our listeners could really relate to?
Sure. Eva, I'll let you answer that one.
The issue's exclusive to just the two of us, but I also think it's what many couples face. That I grew up in an alcoholic home. Did not really realize how that had affected me. So in the work that we had done for those 2 years, we never really went deep into our traumas, what had happened from our family of origin. So once I was on my own and alone, I began to do that work and understand what had happened to me, that I had been almost set up in a sense that, just because of what I grew up in, addiction was so familiar to me. So that was something that was exclusive to us, but I also know many couples face the same thing. Addiction was familiar. It looked different, but it certainly was something that I could see that created the intimacy disorder in me, not really knowing how to connect in an intimate way with another person where I'm completely known. So I learned how to, early on, as a young child, learn how to walk into the room and take the temperature, kind of feel everybody out and be who everybody wanted me to be. I really didn't know who I was. Once I did the work, and this has been a lifelong journey, and I know it will continue to be a lifelong journey. I'm certainly not there yet, and I won't be on this side of heaven. But every year there's a new awareness that happens in our journey, and I'm so grateful for the journey today, just to really understand and know myself, but also to be with a partner who's willing and committed to his own recovery, as am I, and to really know one another. I mean, it is truly getting to the place where you begin to have the marriage that God intended us to have all along.
Well, how did you two figure that out? Because obviously you were divorced. You thought that the relationship was over, and then what happened?
Well, once I got into my own recovery and started working on myself and being an adult child of an alcoholic, the first step I did was I went to an ACOA group. When they gave me the characteristics of an adult child of an alcoholic, I was like, oh, my goodness, this is me. And so many of these characteristics are exactly describe how I do life. And I had never thought about that in our counseling. We had like I said, we'd never gone there. So when I began to see that I was just as broken, it looked different, but brokenness meets brokenness. So when I began to see I had my own journey of recovery to go on, and two, just being able to not, my husband was my drug of choice. That relationship was where I put all my safety and security in, that I had to get in a place where I had to walk that journey myself. I couldn't depend on another person to meet all my needs, and that's what I had been doing for a long time. So once I
so
began and
you
had
are
that
realizing. Now, can I ask you something? Because you're realizing that you're broken, and certainly way back then, we referred to the partner as a co-addict, and we don't do that anymore.
No.
But it really was important for you to say, hey, I grew up in a family that had intimacy disorders too, and I've got to work on some things that have to do with me.
That's right. Yes, and once I could see that, then I began to be open to reconciliation. We had 2 small children. Our oldest son at the time was about 3.5, and our youngest son was around 18 months. So I had 2 very good reasons to try to be open to reconciliation. If my partner was willing to stay in the journey of recovery, that I wanted to join him in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, this had to be quite a revelation for you, Rowan. You had to feel like, wow, you were getting a second chance.
Oh, absolutely. Because the last thing that I wanted to do was to lose my marriage. This thing had manifested in my life. First time I was exposed to porn, which is so typical for so many guys, 9, 10 years old. And that became my drug of choice. I grew up, I didn't have a whole lot of adult supervision. I had 2 older brothers that were 4 and 5 years older, and they were like my surrogate parents. I call them the wolf pack. And I was raised by the wolves, and so it was certainly not what I wanted to be, to lose the marriage. But the sexual addiction had taken such a hold on me from such an early age, and so I had to begin, when Eva, talked about wanting to get back together. I was certainly very open to that. And then, when she started talking about doing her own work, and then we started talking about what would it look like. And one of the things that we committed to was, we're going to go to counseling, and we're going to do whatever it takes to, dig in with this stuff and figure out how do you have a healthy relationship. And so certainly the thing that was tragic in a sense, this sexual addiction, was really the catalyst and the gift that brought us to the place where we really began to understand what intimacy looks like and what it really is. And it's been a journey, like Eva said earlier. We certainly haven't arrived yet. We still work at it, but we're very intentional about that. And we have been for since we remarried, and we did a lot of counseling and did a lot of our own group work, and we've been giving back by doing groups ourselves, and certainly now as full-time counselors, that's our area of specialization.
So help me to understand a little bit, because you 2 were actually separated for how long?
We were separated in a total of, we were separated it was 1992. It's hard to remember all of the details, but we were separated from the fall until the beginning of the year. So somewhere from September to the beginning of the year. And then the divorce was final. And, I really, we were living in the Atlanta area at the time. When I had gone to see a lawyer, it was really, I just wanted a separation. I wanted to be protected financially. And she was like, the lawyer was a female, and she was like, well, what's the big deal? I mean, you're not going to be protected in the state of Georgia. There's not a legal separation. So just, get divorced, and you'll be protected financially. And if you decide to get remarried, you can always get remarried. And so I kind of hung on to that, thinking that, I really still had some hope, but not a whole lot. I was very afraid. I was filled with a lot of fear. So separated from the fall around September till the end of that year, and the divorce was final, and we remarried the next fall, September. So a total of a year. Mm-hmm.
And at what point after you two got remarried, at what point did you decide that you were going to help other couples facing the same issue?
Well,
I would say for me, probably I was a little bit slower in the Roane was really very much into the 12-step recovery groups. I was a little resistant in the beginning because I would get so triggered in the groups, in the ones for spouses. And I know now, that's very, very typical. I would hear things that I hadn't thought about. And that was early on. But I would say probably around between 5 years into recovery, 5 to 10 years into recovery, we really began to give back. Just facilitating a group or filling in to facilitate a group, maybe meeting with a couple, and telling our story, what we had gone through, and maybe they were just in the beginning. So it started out like that.
Well, it sounds like it started out small, and then at what point did you decide, okay, we need to get our education? We're going to look into ITAP, that international institute that trains professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after we were both working in corporate world and kind of doing recovery and support group stuff along the way, just through our church and other venues, and somewhere probably I'm 54 now, and in my early 40s was when I really began to think that, moving in the direction of counseling and doing this full time was kind of life 2.0 plan. And so we began that journey together in Atlanta, and then we actually finished that up. We moved back to Mississippi, which is where we're both from originally, about 8 years ago. And we actually finished our counseling degrees here. And the CSAT, that was always in the back of our minds, something that we knew we wanted to do. And then once we got through with all the graduate work and got licensed, then we moved in the direction of, that was the next step. And so we just finished going through, all the training. And so, it's always kind of been a part of where we wanted to get to, just because we wanted the training and the education.
We felt like the CSAT was the gold star. It was the highest level we could get to in our training around sexual addiction.
Absolutely, and it really helps all of us to know how to cope with topics of the day. For instance, this Ashley Madison event with the data breach. What do you all think about that? How do you feel about that Ashley Madison data breach, and what kind of an impact do you think it's had on our society?
Well, it certainly has had an impact in our little community here, and I say little community, at Jackson, Mississippi area. There were there were lots of people that were on the list, and the exposure, the public exposure and the humiliation and the shame that came along with that. We've seen just some really, difficult, even tragic situations that have happened as a result of that. And I think, you're aware, and others of just, there have been suicides and those types of things because of the shame that comes along with the exposure. Even, when I just admitted it Eva, the shame was one of the things that kept me from ever doing that. And so when this gets exposed in that kind of way, it just has such a devastating impact on certainly the person that's on the list, but then certainly for the partners and the family.
Oh, absolutely. The partners and the families, the children are so affected by all of it because of the public being so public.
So you actually have worked with some families that have been directly impacted by Ashley Madison's scandal.
Yes.
Yeah, I just did an interview on that, and I said, even though the addict carries the shame, it's really the partner that carries the pain, and together that can be a deadly combination.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So now let me ask you, do you think that couples with sexual addiction, do you think that they suffer from a false sense of intimacy? Because you're really putting together a book. I know, Rowan, you referenced it a little bit differently, but I have Couples Roadmap to Recovery from False Intimacy to True Intimacy. And I'm wondering what the difference is, and I'd like for you to talk a little bit about false intimacy.
Well, the way, we just, and of course, we come from a faith-based paradigm, and, we just talk about this idea of intimacy as simply, knowing and being known. And when you've got addiction in play, whether it's sexual addiction or any, there's secrets. And whenever secrets are present, intimacy cannot happen just by definition because we're not known. And so this idea of false intimacy is what we see, even in the couples that aren't dealing with sexual addiction. Most couples are just kind of going through life, sucking air and drinking water. At the end of the day, they get home and report about the kids or report about work, and there's very little deep connection that happens. They don't do the things that couples that have an intimate marriage do, and that are actually part of a healthy marriage, healthy relationship. And so the false intimacy is just kind of this, it's basically two islands or two ships in the night that are just disconnected and isolated in reality.
Well, I was just getting ready to ask because obviously sexual addiction is an intimacy disorder, and so your belief is that when there are secrets, that it clearly affects the safety, connection, and trust, perhaps, of the couple, and then people are just interacting and not really working on closeness and communication and connection.
That's right, because, the addict is going to protect the secret. So if the partner asks questions or really tries to draw him out, he'll skirt around all of it for a while. And maybe she won't even know the questions to ask, but she may feel the disconnection before he does. As women, we're hardwired for an emotional connection. So a lot of times the partner will feel it before the addict does, and we're talking in the sense that the husband is the addict and the wife is the partner. It can certainly be in reverse.
Absolutely. And we're seeing more and more of that. I was wondering if, obviously, you two suffered with this intimacy disorder and sexual addiction from the 90s on. How do you think that couples who are dealing with this today, how is it different today than it was back then?
I don't think it's a whole lot different. I think there's certainly, thank goodness, there's more information that's out there. But one of the things that we find in working with couples is just in the whole arena of sexuality, there's usually just a lot of shame. And one of the reasons we believe that occurs is because most of us, we get very little information from our parents around sexuality. We even call that, it's almost a form of covert sexual abuse, because this thing that has, such great power for life and joy also has great power for destruction and death. And when you're not getting the information, around just healthy sexuality and what it means to be a sexual being and learning how to deal with that, we're just left to our own devices to kind of figure it out. And with the pornification of our culture, what we figure out is not good. And so now we've got a generation of the cyber kids that are now entering marriages, and we're just seeing, more and more of these, young couples that are coming in because, the husband's been looking at porn since he was 10 years old on the internet, and he's having a hard time dealing with the real thing. And so it's different.
Well, I agree with you, and
sense.
I'd even go so far, Rowan, to say that females are so sexualized that even if they don't have particularly sexually addictive behaviors, they've been taught to look at porn too, to do this with their boyfriends, to be sexualized and objectified. And so we got two young people who don't know what real intimacy is about or how to respect their bodies, their spirits, and their mind.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That's exactly right.
I got into this field because I was getting a lot of calls from school systems who said, hey, we've got kids on the bus that are participating in oral sex, and then we've got other kids that are taking pictures of them, videos, and then sending them to all their friends. So it was going viral, and it was becoming such an epidemic. The schools didn't know what to do with it. The kids didn't understand, the implications of their actions. And to be real honest, neither did I. So that's when I decided I need some CSAT training, because I don't know what in the heck to do for this school, for the kids and the families.
Right.
Yeah, we call, it's like this, oral sex today with the teenagers is like smoking used to be when we were growing up. It was like you go, in the parking lot at school and smoke a cigarette, and that was kind of the big deal. But now it's like oral sex is kind of taking its place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really has affected and impacted families, which then of course impacts the community and our lives at large. We may have to come back and talk about that. Now let me just ask you a couple of quick questions, because I can see that our time is ending. Do you believe, I know the answer to this, but I want to know what you think. Do you think a couple can overcome sexual addiction and have a good marriage? And if so, what do they need to do to make that happen?
Well, obviously, we do believe that.
We do believe that.
You're living proof.
Yes,
right.
We are.
Yes. And like I said earlier, this thing that we, certainly when you're in the middle of it or when it first breaks, it's tragic and it's painful. But at the same time, it's the pain and the tragedy that God uses to bring us to a place where we really begin to understand more of what life is about, and certainly relationships and intimacy. And so that very thing that was meant for bad, for evil, has actually been the best thing that's ever happened to us, because it forced us to begin to look at those things that were preventing us and certainly dragging us down and taking us out to where we could really begin to have the relationship and the marriage that God intended. And it doesn't come easy, but it's certainly been worth all the effort and the investment and intentionality that we've put into it.
Yeah. And, I know that you were instrumental in getting Celebrate Recovery to acknowledge this issue. And we're lucky enough, I'm the only CSAT in Indianapolis, which is absolutely horrible, but we do have a lot of Celebrate Recovery groups. Now, I ask my clients to kind of steer away from them because there are so many SAA and SA groups, and I feel like the more specialized help they get, the better. And there is so much shame with sexual addiction that I know Celebrate Recovery is set up to handle that, and it's definitely a really good choice if you don't have any other types of 12-step groups. I'm kind of curious.
Right. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, I was kind of curious because obviously you do minister to people and you have helped Celebrate Recovery get started. And I'm wondering if somebody could go to an SAA group or an SA group or a Celebrate Recovery group, what would your advice be?
Well, for the partner, I'll speak for the partner. They need to be in a group where they can be completely open and share what's really going on. Sometimes in the Celebrate Recovery group, it's going to be more of a codependency group, so they'll have all different kinds of issues, but they need it needs to be issue specific to sexual addiction.
Yeah.
That's why, we do like SAA a lot and do support that. I also like life groups that are for partners of sex addicts, that it is issue specific and helps them focus on themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would add that the Celebrate Recovery groups are good in the sense that if someone's coming from a Christian kind of framework, they're going to feel more comfortable there just because of the higher power piece, which as we know, the 12 steps were certainly straight out of Scripture, I believe. And it certainly, invites people into that faith journey. And so many people have been wounded through church and those types of things. And the thing that we do know with SA and SAA is that those groups are typically going to be more consistent. And so I would, want somebody that's going to a group that's good. And there are some good Celebrate Recovery groups out there, but they're not as consistent as what you would find with SA or SAA meetings with the program and the steps.
Right.
Well, I would agree with that. And so I'm curious, Eva, you had mentioned, did you call it Life Works?
A life group? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, a life group.
And so what are life groups?
Life group is a life recovery group. They have them for sex addicts, but they also have them for the spouses, for the partners. And it's just issue specific to sexual addiction.
Yeah, and those groups were developed by Dr. Mark Laser, who actually trained with Patrick Carnes. And I don't know if you're familiar with Mark, but Mark is kind of on the Christian side of the fence, but certainly incorporates all of the CSAT, underlying structures, and the clinical pieces are in those as well. So, very, very similar in that respect.
No, but I'll have to get him on the show because I'd like to hear more about it. Yes. I'm sure my listening audience would love that too.
Yeah. Dr. Mark Laser, he certainly knows Dr. Carnes, and but Mark and Debbie Laser. It's called Faithful and True is the name of their organization.
So they can, my listening audience can Google Faithful and True, and it's Mark Laser. And if I'm not mistaken, I know that you all had said that you knew him. That's Dr. Mark Laser, Laser, And so you can Google that information if you're interested in finding out more about this type of programming. I'll see if I can't get them on the show. Now, we have to end, and I'm curious, how can my listening audience get a hold of the two of you if they want more information about your book that's coming out and the services you offer?
Yeah, our website is the easiest way to do that, and it is www.lifeworks, all one word, lifeworks, for Mississippi, .com. So it's lifeworksms.com.
Got it. So I would encourage anybody who wants to find out more about this inspirational couple or the book that they're getting ready to put out to go to www.lifeworksms.com. And so, Eva and Roane, I hope to have you on again. I really appreciate you disseminating this information, and you just keep doing what you're doing because it's amazing, and it obviously has worked for you as a couple, and you're paying it forward, and that's what life's all about.
Absolutely.
Yes,
yes. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, as you can see, they've got a lot of good information. Obviously, they've been through the ringer. They got a divorce, and then they remarried, and they're going strong. So hopefully they provided you some Mississippi inspiration, and I hope to have them on again when that book gets finished. Well, we have to end for today. And next week, I am going to be interviewing, if I'm not mistaken, Thomas Gagliano, who is going to be talking about something near and dear to his heart. We've had him on before. He's written a book about self-reflection. And this time around, he's going to be talking about parenting. And you and I both know that if you've got kids, it always helps to get information about how to work with them, you know, what techniques to use. And so I thought I would interview Thomas. He's an amazing author, and I look forward to talking with him next week. You know, I appreciate you listening to the show. If you have any questions, again, you can email me at carolthecoach@aol.com. And as I say at the end of every show, there'll only be one of you at all times. So I fearlessly want you to have the courage to be yourself. Make it a great week and pay it forward and work on your recovery. You're listening to Sex Help with Carol, the Coach.